H. Howard Productions proudly presents TRN, the Retro Network of Podcasting.
Shooting at the walls of heartache, bang, bang. I am the warrior. I am the warrior.
All right, I'm not doing Bash anymore.
Bravo! That was perfect.
That was nicely done.
Thank you, everyone,
nicely
for
done.
being here for our Glow Season 3 Roundtable review. The winner of tonight's podcast will be the one who is the first to throw another podcaster through that roundtable, okay? Just so we got all that on the line. That's how you win tonight's belt. But anyway, I'm Jason. I'll be fighting out of the pink corner tonight. Actually, wait, all the corners are pink, so just scrap that. I'll just be the referee tonight. So for our other three contestants that we have on the line, and I'm going to make sure there's no pulling of hair or throwing glitter dust at each other. We need to have a clean fight tonight, okay?
Oh, man.
No promises.
Well, let's.
There goes all the stuff that I put around the ring. You know, I hid some items.
Yeah, the tables and everything underneath the ring. Okay, well, let's meet the other combatants here in our squared circle tonight. In one corner, wearing her favorite Hollywood t-shirt and carrying her Liberty Bell and Zoya action figures, it's Stacey. How are you?
I'm like a meal with all the fixins. I'm nerdy and cute. I'm the geeky vixen.
Woo!
Nice. Came ready. I love it when people come ready. Okay, in another corner, wearing his signature black and white face paint and wielding his flame-shooting guitar, it's Adam.
I'm Adam from Sequel Quest Pod. I play with 80s toys. Do you think that's odd? I collect VHS, and I must confess, I like to watch Glow Wrestling because I think it's the best.
Woo!
No pressure, Dave. And in the last corner, wearing his shiny Bonsai Retro Club members-only jacket and sporting a bionic arm, it's Dave.
And I've got nothing.
You're still welcome here, sir. You're still welcome.
I was not ready with an intro poem or. I feel so ill-equipped right now. I don't know what to do. Don't throw me out, please.
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah. All right.
Well, just welcome everybody, and yeah, like I said, welcome Dave of the Bonsai Retro Club as our guest tonight.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for the invite. I'm so glad that, anytime that we can get together and talk retro topics, it's always a blast. I mean, I know that you've been on our show and you did like that Jeopardy thing, so too much time has passed. Anytime we have the opportunity to interact a little bit more than just tweeting with each other, it's great.
Yeah, I need to come up with another Bonsai Jeopardy for y'all to go through. So we are here to, as I love to say, spoil the crap out of Glow Season 3 and Season 1 and 2 as well. So if you haven't watched the show, please just stop the recording now. Go watch it. If you don't care, then it's fine. Keep rolling. Or if you've seen it, better yet. And you can understand and kind of interact with us after we get through with the podcast over there on the social media. So just that's your warning. We are going to spoil the crap out of it. But before we get into the Netflix show, I first wanted to go kind of around the ring and get everybody's thoughts and maybe memories of watching the original Glow wrestling show back in the day. So let's start with Stacey, because I know you just had an article put up on the Retro Network about your love of Glow. So I'm anxious to hear how you got into it.
I did. Well, it's one of those things I don't remember exactly how it came about. I hypothesized in my article that it was probably from my mom letting me stay up too late on a weekend and catching it after something like Friday Night Videos or who knows, and just being mesmerized by all of these women of all shapes and sizes and bright colors and different characters, and some of them were very much like my heroes, like Princess Leia and Wonder Woman and She-Ra, Princess of Power, and others were like the misfits from Gem and Holograms. And it was just like this cool mix of like badass ladies that some of them were beautiful and some of them were weirdos, and it was just it was beautiful. And as I said in my article, it kind of taught me about girl power, and that it's not necessarily one type of woman that can be strong and a hero or a villain. It's all kinds of different women. So and actually a few years ago, got to say that same thing to Hollywood from Glow. She was at a convention that I was attending, and she was very nice and had a very long conversation with her. And so it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, in the article, when she said that she was surprised that she was getting some girl fans come up to her because, yeah, not all the pervy guys at our age now that remember watching it as teenagers. But yeah, that's just such a great story, and how I don't think of this stuff because I'm a guy, but being able to read it and get to your experience is a lot of fun to hear about. So speaking of us guys, let's go have Adam go next and tell me how you got into Glow, or if you did get into Glow as a kid.
Oh, I'm way into Glow, probably more than I should be after all these years. But my babysitter's like cool older brother introduced me to Glow once. I was like 5 or 6 when I was over at their house, and he was watching it. I was just instantly fascinated, right? I'm like the glitter, the leotards, the rapping, the violence. There's so much mixed into it, the comedy and everything, and like. For example, it was hard actually for me to find the show because it felt like Glow was always jumping around time slots in my area. Mm-hmm. So when I could catch it, I was always thrilled. I'd be like going to my parents like, "Can I watch girl wrestling?" And then my family had no idea what I was talking about. So I'd just be flipping channels on a Saturday afternoon, hope to find Babe the Farmer's Daughter going up against Hollywood or something. And so I remember actually that they were pretty much like they had the show, but then they would show up on other programs. I was homesick from elementary school one day, and I remember seeing a whole episode of Donahue featuring the Glow Girls and just going out of my mind. Big Bad Mama throws Phil Donahue out of the ring, And then, they were on sitcoms and game shows and even movies. So I'm actually writing an article right now that'll be available on the site when this episode drops. So you can find out where Glow was featured in the 80s and early 90s on TV and movies. But it was a big deal for me too, because like I never kind of lost my interest, but it just wasn't there. And then the early 2000s, Babe the Farmer's Daughter bought the Glow library, and she started selling like DVDs direct from their website in stores, which I bought. And there was one that included a Glow reunion that was like a behind the scenes disc, because they were planning to reboot the show at one point, but it just never took off. People got injured. There's all these other issues, that came up. So I've always I've loved them. I always thought that the characters were so out there and fun. Like I'll just mention, of the original group, because it changed. They had like almost a brand new group of wrestlers, except for a few that would hang on. And like Godiva and Zelda the Brain were my favorites because they were on such opposite sides of the spectrum. Because Godiva's like this nasty, stuck-up British bombshell, they called her, who would jab an elbow into her opponent's eyes, like get him in the corner. And then Zelda was this tiny nerd who like would literally just get beat up all the time, So, but they were both so like entertaining in their own ways. And now like Godiva follows me on Twitter and has commented like on articles I've written about Glow for other sites over the years, which is like a major personal accomplishment. 6-year-old me could never have imagined that. So I'm only continue to be thrilled, by that connection online. So
I saw you tweet right before we went on the air, and she was liking it and retweeting it, and I was like, "Oh, okay, there we go." Yeah,
it's awesome.
All right, Dave, up to you.
Yeah, I remember watching and getting just fascinated because, they didn't have that cover girl look. Not all of them had that look. You had like the Farmer's Daughter that, teenage boys like myself were, appreciating the female form. But, I mean, it was just all types. And it fascinated me from just the crazy storylines that they had. Like with I believe there was one where they like stole the guy's butler or stole another person's butler. And then that was like an ongoing storyline where they like made him into a bad boy. And then they carried on to the commercials. Like they were promoting products.
Yeah.
And, they would have those cheesy commercials, like, whatever it was that they were selling, from the gift shop or whatever.
And like hair care products and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And it was just, it was almost like that, the thing that you couldn't look away from. It was almost like a train wreck, and you were like, but a good train wreck, if that could be imagined. But it was just so much fun and so different from what you were getting from like WWF back then, because that was so polished and so over produced, and this wasn't that. This was raw, and it just felt that way, and in a good way, and it seemed accessible. And then the other thing that came later on, as I was doing podcasting, was our former show that I was hosting was 80s Reboot Overdrive, and I got the chance to talk to Hollywood. And she was awesome. She was absolutely just a blast to talk to. Yeah. So I really enjoyed being able to catch up with her and just kind of getting the behind the scenes, conversation. So it was fantastic.
Awesome. That's great. Yeah. Anytime you can interact with any kind of celebrity on Twitter, or even when they come on your show, jealous that you had Stan Bush on your show too. It's really cool just to be able to interact with people on a personal level like that, and when they're really receptive to the fanboy or the fangirl, it just makes it even better. So that's great. My experience, I honestly can't remember watching the show, like sitting down watching the show at night. I was more of a like roller games and American Gladiators, and I those shows I remember watching like with my dad, and for some reason he never got into wrestling or anything like that, so I never really watched the show growing up. I remember it being on, and like Adam was saying, them being on different game shows and things of that nature. But I was more of a victim of the modern love or throwback to the 80s when I heard that the show was coming on. And the first thing I did before I even watched an episode was watch that Glow documentary that was on Netflix. I don't know if it's still there or not.
Yeah, it's there. Yeah.
Okay. Just to kind of catch up and to hear the history behind it and all of the reaction from the ladies. And I think there was if I remember right, at the end of that was kind of leading towards a reunion of a lot of them, maybe in Las Vegas or someplace. But it was great just to get that little overview of the show and the history before stepping into the 80s, which is what I was excited for going into the show. So give me just some quick reactions to like going into season 1 and 2, I guess. And as you were watching the show, reactions, favorite scenes, any kind of stuff like that. Adam.
Okay, well, I already loved Allison Brie from Community, so to have her star in this show, which was based on something that already meant a lot to me, I was pretty excited. So when the hype started, I 100%, bought into it. I'm like, I will be there, the night it drops, I will be watching it. And I ended up going on like a family trip, so I'm like watching it like in the bathroom. I'm just like, wherever I can get a minute when nobody's paying attention, kids are asleep, all right, wife's asleep, all right, let me watch an episode, So, but I really, really got into it. And I remember just being surprised that it seemed like it was actually really dramatic, like especially the pilot, that first episode. It was a little too intense for me at first, like just the rivalry with Ruth and Debbie and all that. And I'm glad that, as the series went on, they backed off a little bit and had a little bit more fun with the characters. But I just had to say, like, when they, speaking of Hollywood, there's a lot of characters that are analogs, but not 100%, based on on the original Glow Girls. But when Melrose does her introduction, like Sam is asking, like, say what you tell us what your special skill is, your favorite wrestling position. I don't care, And I love when she just comes out. She's like, "What my special skill is that I'm not freaking boring. Like I can wake up and do nothing with nothing to do and be in a Van Halen music video by the end of the day." Like, I just love her attitude. So that cracked me up. And again, like talking about how Godiva and Zelda were like my favorite characters in the original series. Well, Britannica is like the two of them combined, so it couldn't have been more perfect. And I think she's really grown as a character as well. But especially just the line that has stuck with me since season 1 and watching it is at the very end, last episode, Zoya has betrayed Fortune Cookie. She's going to get the crown. No one can beat Zoya. Everyone here is too much sissy, okay? Like, so funny. I mean, Alison Brie just nails that. She's got the whole Notchka thing going down. So that was like a big, big deal for me, at least as far as season 1 goes. And just the lines kept coming in season 2. Like Sheila talking about Cheers is about an invisible woman named Vera. Like, I mean, to me, like for a TV nerd, that's like gold. And Liberty Bell, there's like this great match they're having, and she just goes, "I've been at home baking pies all day. Pies of rage."
Yes.
Oh,
some really great lines.
And even just the concept of Debbie breaking Ruth's ankle while high on cocaine, like, and how they managed to make that a big bonding moment for everybody was pretty hilarious. And of course, having the kid from The Sandlot come in as Cupcake, the guy who's obsessed with Britannica, that was a major cameo for a 90s kid, So I'm just like, yes, Cupcake.
That was pretty great. He's pretty much instantly recognizable, so I was loving that as well. So Dave, what was your take going into the series?
Well, I started watching it, and it took me a little while to get kind of into it, because I was hoping to just kind of jump right into when they started wrestling, but they had to give them the backstory and kind of how they got all together. And what kept me going was Sam. Mm-hmm. I just love him. He was just so fantastic, and I love watching his character kind of just be. I don't know. It's hesitant to call it the glue, but just what kept the thing together, but being just the jerk that he is to everybody. But it was such a fun ride to watch him as a character. So to me, that was season 1. I loved watching anything that Sam was involved in, and his take on just do it. Just don't, let's not overthink it, and don't. This is just wrestling. Come on, and it was just. It's just so matter of fact about the whole thing, and everyone else wants a production, but he's like, let's make it good, but it's wrestling, and so season 1 was like that, but then season 2 had this great of them really wanting to make sure that they were being better than the other wrestling shows that were taking over their time slot. And I love the competitiveness where they had to like really amp up their game in order to stay on. And you really saw a lot of the theatrics with the matches, and that was fun for me. So I really love that, from season 2 was just the over the top theatrics of the matches.
Gotcha. Yeah. Sam is definitely my favorite character of the series, and really why I kept watching from the very beginning. And like Adam said, there was that huge kind of divide there, just beginning from the pilot, but having that awkwardness travel throughout that first season, and then Sam being the one to make sure that they're doing their part to keep the show going was great. And Mark Maron, just a fantastic job in the first couple seasons. I don't know, his just mannerisms, he comes off just whatever's on his mind is coming out of his mouth, and you're going to abide by it, or there's going to be consequences, Right. And then, but he still gets all those curveballs thrown at him. And in the meantime, he's struggling with addiction and everything else. And it's just this hurricane of everything coming together, throughout that series, and with all the characters, the very, very colorful characters. I think the whole cast did a great job through the first couple seasons as I'm watching. Stacey, how was your take going into the show, season 1 and through season 2?
Well, given my background with Glow, when I heard about it, I was very excited. I think I had just watched the Glow documentary, and there's another wrestling documentary. It's not so much focused on Glow specifically, but just women in wrestling, called Lipstick and Dynamite. And so I was already in a mindset of being just absolutely fascinated with Glow and women in wrestling, and as I have been for a long time, but kind of rekindled that. And then I heard that Netflix was making a series based on Glow, and obviously was excited. And then I already, like Adam, I very much love Allison Brie because of Community, and I was already following her on Instagram and started seeing her videos of her training and the intense training she was going through, and was absolutely enamored and thought, I'm in 100%. Season 1 did not disappoint, and I think the interesting thing, at least for me, like going into it, the way they frame the first episode, you almost think like this is Ruth's story. This is a story that's clear, like truly, like Ruth is the main character. It's about everything through Ruth's lens. And, I kept that mindset through season 1, but then going into season 2, Ruth was my favorite character. And then by the end of season 2, Debbie was my favorite character. Like in my head, I wanted to play Debbie as the villain, because, Ruth messed up, but she wasn't being fair. Debbie wasn't being fair to her. She was punishing her. And then they start humanizing Debbie, and then her evolution. And then, of course, all the other characters as well. But Pies of Rage was probably my favorite part of season 2. I use that line so much. Like it has replaced, the Clue, Mrs. White flames on the side of my face. Like I don't say that anymore. I say Pies of Rage, because it's just like, it's so succinct and perfect. But yeah, I mean, and probably my favorite thing they've done is the season 2, towards the end of the season, where they do the show within the show, where it's literally just an episode of Glow. And it immediately took me back to being a kid and watching Glow. So yeah, I mean, I love the creativity, and honestly, and I'm a little ashamed to say this, but this was the thing that really made me a fan of Mark Maron. I have been aware of Mark Maron for a long time. I've seen a little of his stand-up, but didn't really understand why everybody loves Mark Maron as much as they do until I started watching Glow. I think this is, this role shows his depth as an actor, for sure.
I totally agree. Yeah, I had no connection really with any of the actors going in. I remember Allison Brie from Mad Men, just, she was just a short role on there. It wasn't anything major. And then I've never got into Mark Maron's podcast or anything, so I was coming in fresh on everybody. And let me tell you, the thing that just made me want to watch, and this is going to sound stupid, but the opening title credits are like my favorite.
Yes,
my
so
favorite
awesome.
opening title of television history. Let me tell you, it's just so great. The song that they picked, Warrior, oh gosh, and that whole sequence just gets you so pumped for the season. And I wish they would do it every episode instead of just at the beginning. Yeah. But at the same time, it's fun just to get that at the beginning of the season to kind of push you through. But oh my gosh, that just, let me tell you, 80s overload with the opening title credits. So this, I mean, the series as a whole, as we kind of transition to the current season, they've been, Allison Brie and Betty Gilpin, they've been nominated for Emmys, and I think Brie was nominated for a Golden Globe, and the only thing that they've won really has been the production design and stunt coordination, which I'm kind of, that's kind of good. Because I think that was done really well in the first couple seasons. And then now kind of transitioning to season 3, I'm just taking a little temperature. It seems mainly positive as far as the critical reviews. I think they're like 88% on Rotten Tomatoes. So it seems like there's a lot of at least positive reviews for season 3. And the trailers were great, kind of coming out of season 2. And when we got the season 3 trailers, I was like, oh, yeah, I'm ready to watch again. You know, I got to see what's happening in Vegas. So now here we are in season 3. Let's start with Dave and just give me your quick overall impression coming off. I think we all just basically binged the show and finished up this past week. So what's your kind of overall impression of season 3?
I hate to say it, but I think it's the weakest season. I'm not overly that impressed. I'm more of I love season 2, and if I were to put them in order, I would go 2, 1, and then 3. And what kind of I had a problem was it just felt like it was so about the relationship of the characters versus, putting the show on. And that's what I like to see. That's kind of why I checked into the series to watch. So I felt like I didn't get that much. But what I really loved about season 3 is there was so many great period moments that remind you of what was going on, that specific year. You had the Challenger disaster. Mm-hmm. You had the AIDS scare. And things like that were going on. And you go, yeah, that's right. That is what was happening back then at that time. And I really love the way that they incorporated that into their lives and what was going on in the show. So I thought that was fantastic.
Okay. Stacey.
So I will counter what Dave said. I liked the fact that it was more focused on the relationships. And you're not the only person. I've seen a lot of people say there wasn't enough wrestling. I think the wrestling that we got was amazing, and by design, the fact that they centered it around a show in Vegas where they were doing the same things that we'd already seen pretty much every night. I mean, we had Freaky Tuesday and some of the things that were a little bit different, but I like the fact that now that they've got this show in Vegas, they've got more time to breathe and get to know each other as people. Because if you think about it, they really haven't had a chance to understand each other. The comparison I would make is instead of watching an episode of Glow, it was like watching the documentary about Glow. It was more about the things that people were going through as they were wrestling, or the things that they were going through because of the wrestling. So, I thought it was great. There's a lot of, I thought they covered a lot of really important ground, especially, with some of the, struggles that some of the people had in their relationships, or, and I know we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but, yeah, so overall, very pleased. It was definitely a shift in tone, but I understand why it was a shift in tone. It felt very much like it was by design. It wasn't a misstep in my eyes.
Wow. Point, counterpoint. Nice.
Ding, ding, ding. Adam, care to throw yourself in the ring here?
Yeah, I'll see what we do here. So, what I thought was interesting is I was watching like the hype and the growth and the excitement leading up to season 3. Because, after seasons 1 and 2, like there was a lot of stuff just kind of out there if you were paying attention. For example, like when season 2 hit, People magazine had this retro cover on the back that had Liberty Bell on it, but it was like the 80s logo for People magazine. I don't know if you guys saw that, but I got that and I was super excited. And then I knew it really hit big because I was going through Walmart, and on the box for these flat screen TVs for the smart TV feature, talk about Netflix, what did they have on there? Glow. Like Glow is the flagship show they're promoting. So I was like, wow, and I think it's also interesting. It's worth noting that it's funny to me that all the promotional imagery they still show is always from Sam's like fantasy vision from that first episode, when Debbie and Ruth are actually
Right.
going
Yep.
at it,
Yes.
and his
Mhm.
imagination of what it could look like. It's not the actual outfits they end up wearing, so it's always that super extreme, makeup and costumes. So going into season 3, I was like, okay, so what are they going to do to make it different? And I guess what I would say, what I walked away from having watched it was I enjoyed that it was very much like the honeymoon is over. It kind of flip-flopped to where at the beginning it was Ruth versus Debbie, right? And that's all going away. But now they seem to basically have smoothed it over. And now everybody else is fighting and everybody else is having problems with each other, so it's like a whole different shift. And so I enjoyed that new look at it, just to say, okay, there's a different dimension to Debbie and Ruth's relationship, but now everybody else is getting on each other's nerves or making each other upset. So what's going on there? So I enjoyed it
Gotcha.
for that.
Okay. I guess we're going to make this a tag team bout because I'm going to side more a little bit with Dave on this one. I thought it had some great moments, but overall, I thought it definitely took a dive from like the first 2 seasons. And I'm going to just address the elephant in the room here. How Stranger Things upped the gore in season 3, I think Glow upped the sex to the point where I was like not comfortable watching it.
Yeah,
like
that was a shock.
I mean, getting through like the 3rd episode, I can't go on like this, man. If my wife sees me watching this, man, she's gonna be like, what the hell are you doing? But it was to the point where I just felt like it was more shock factor than anything. And in like season 1, there's some moments there after Debbie, after she breaks Zoya's ankle, and she's in the locker room there, and Bash kind of walks in, and he's like, whoa, and kind of shades his eyes, and we're all kind of, at least I'm kind of feeling that same way. I'm like, whoa, okay. But it was to the point now where I was like, okay, let me skip 30 seconds. Okay, let me skip 30 seconds. It just kind of took me out of the episode, and I wish they would have not quite went that far. It just felt like more shock factor to me than anything. So that took some away from just my viewing experience. But in the same way where, Stacey, I think you enjoyed them kind of individually struggling, or at least individually developing or going through something. That's where I was kind of like with Dave. I wanted to see more of the team aspect of it, and not so much, oh my gosh, okay, so now Cherry's struggling with gambling. Okay, now she's not. And then something else happened. The whole thing with Melrose and Fortune Cookie, and when they're out in the desert, and that whole racism thing pops up, and then they go to the club, and then when they get all this homophobia that happens there, and it's just real quick, subtle stuff that I felt like was just shoehorned into the season almost. And they're genuine and they're real issues that were going on back then, like Dave was saying. But even the Challenger at the beginning of the season, I'm like, man, you're starting the season on a downer. I'm already pumped up and I want to see what's going to go on. And then all of a sudden, it just seemed like it plummeted. And maybe they're just setting the tone for all of the stuff that each of the characters are going to go through the season. But it just wasn't what I was, I guess, prepared for coming out of season 2. So having said that, let's just get some thoughts on like the overall story, or if you want to get into some of the characters and how they were developed. Let's start with you, Stacey, and just tell me how the story kind of ebbed and flowed for you throughout the season.
Well, like I said, I think they threw a lot at us. But I don't see it as a deterrent. And I can understand kind of the counter. The overall story for me, what I loved about it was how everybody seems to be moving forward except Ruth, and Ruth coming to this realization that she's very resistant. She knows in her heart of hearts that she's not going to be the actress she wants to be, but she's not willing to, to listen to anybody give her advice, because she thinks she knows best. And just seeing Ruth as, Ruth has over the course of 3 seasons has kind of been the cheerleader and the champion of Glow, in the ring and outside the ring, directing and really being the woman behind Sam, pushing him forward. And, even when she's at odds with him, and, she just seems like at the end of season 2, she's found this purpose in Glow. And by the end of season 3, she doesn't really seem to have a direction, and then, talking about, I loved Debbie way more at the end of season 2. I love her even more now at the end of season 3, where she's realizing the reality of being a woman in Hollywood. And I think this is true even today. You don't really get to do it for very long, at least play the roles that, the leading lady roles that you want to play. And she realizes that she's really good at producing, and she wants to be a powerful woman, that way. And she takes a lot of her power back. So, those were the 2 that really resonated with me. But I have to say, like, I did love all of the stuff around, the LGBTQ kind of storylines with, Yolanda and Arthi, and, and realizing that, there's a lot of homophobia, and again, something that I think still resonates, maybe not quite to the same degree or in the same way, but, and coming at the racism thing, that episode, in the desert, and, hearing the whole story, Jenny's story about Cambodia, and, Melrose kind of being like, oh, I didn't really think about it. And, watching Freaky Tuesday and seeing her as Fortune Cookie, like, I was cringing the whole time. And I know that's the point, but the whole time I was just like, I wish she'd stop. Like, it's not, I mean, they tackled a lot over the course of the season, but it never, to me, felt like it was too much or they were pushing an agenda just to do it. It was, hey, these are people that are going through things. They're not just these characters that you see on the screen. So, that was why I really, really enjoyed it.
I definitely agree with you as far as like Ruth and Sam and the drama just behind their relationship is really what I think was the best, or what carried the story for me. Him telling her, that was like at the end of season 2, right? When he was, I'm in love with you, or, I'm in love with you. And she doesn't know how to react to that. And then her journey from struggling with her relationship with Russell from a long distance, and then coming back around and realizing that she might have the same feelings for him and he's not ready for it. I mean, that's like a classic, like, romantic story of one person shifting and then not being in the right time, the right place, and then the other person getting, and that was just, I thought, really good throughout the whole.
Well, and I just love Sam's reaction to her. His line, "Ruth, you're a nightmare."
Yes.
It's true. She jerks a lot of people around, man.
Yeah, she really is.
What she wants.
Well, and she like, that whole thing too is just a microcosm of why she is a nightmare, because she, she's so reluctant to be honest with him about her feelings. And then when she is, and then he tells her, he lays it on the line and says, hey, you're not going to get the part in Justine's movie. And he does it not to be a dick. Like, I think she thinks he's being mean, but he just wants to make sure they start with a clean slate. And then she gets mad at him because I guess, and she never really comes out and says it, but it's almost like, well, I love you and you love me, so I should have this part because you should have fought for me. And he's like, It's not my movie. It's not my place. Like, as much as she's one of those characters that I don't hate her, but I do get mad at her a lot. I'm just like, just stop it. Like, just, like, and I think that's to Alison Brie's credit. And, I think she's she's perfect as
Yeah.
Ruth. But yeah, I mean, just a lot of times I just wanted to be like, I wanted to shake Ruth because she doesn't get it. She just really doesn't get it.
Well,
Yeah.
I think it's easy to play armchair quarterback on that kind of thing. But I think if you were in the same scenario, your gut reaction or your first reaction would be like, look, I was really good when I auditioned, and you knew that. You brought me out here for that reason. So she's going through this whole thing in her brain where this is like going to improve her work situation where she's not going to be just a wrestler. She's going to be the actress she wanted to be. So she had a lot of things going on in her brain. And then to get that news from Sam, of all people, she's like, look, I trusted you. So I get why her reaction was like that. And I would think that was probably as genuine as you could probably get of a reaction from, I think anybody in that same scenario would have that same situation, and you'd need to go take a step back, lick your wounds, and go, okay, I get it now. So, but us as a spectator, we could, that's easy for us to say that.
Oh, absolutely.
Lay off, Ruth.
Yeah.
Give her a break. But I think speaking of like being the actress you want to be, we have to talk about Sheila's transformation.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah.
That's like the biggest thing.
Yeah.
I think that happened. Oh, that was so cool. I mean, and the fact that she wants to be an actress. The teacher, it's almost like she got the glow job because she was hiding behind that persona, and then now she wants to be an actress, and he's like, it's in the way. So she has to come to terms with that. But I just think it's so interesting because they teased it a little bit, right? Like they had that one opening of an episode where, you see her putting it on and you kind of get the idea of what she's really like. And then she talks about her parents. It's like they've given us a little bit of her backstory over time, and we've seen her different skills. She can play the piano, she could, do this and that. So I think it's awesome to kind of watch her with like the support of this community and decide what her dream she really wants is. Okay, I'm not going to hide behind this thing anymore. I'm going to get out there and be me, and then to be celebrated for that was pretty fun. Like that was really nice. That was like the one, because I do agree with Jason that it did feel like there was a lot of melodrama in this season. It was like very soap opera. And so, that was the one to me that felt a lot more real, where I was like, that's, something she was struggling with and she was able to move beyond. So way to go, Sheila.
Yeah. That just whole scene, I couldn't stop smiling when she threw that in the fire and everybody just kind of cheering her on and everything. And then, oh my gosh, her as Liza Minnelli in the ring was just fantastic. I mean, she was my favorite character in the whole season, and just her transformation and just moving forward. I'm interested to see what in the world she's going to do in season 4, and if she's going to continue, kind of being a new character in the ring every time she comes out in the show. We'll get into that to see if the show is going on. But
it's speaking of which, I have to say, like, for my favorite characters, they're probably next to like Vicky Viking, to Reggie, who got her place back on the show, but not to do very much. Are Dawn and Stacey. So like they have a little bit of growth this season, but they're still always just the two of them being goofy and kind of ridiculous. But I have a special place in my heart for them because they are based on two Glow girls who had multiple gimmicks during the run of the show. Because they were the heavy metal sisters, so they were Spike and Chainsaw. Then they were also the racist, like, backwoods gals, Sarah and Mabel, who wore overalls and sacks on their heads.
The Hicks,
so they did like the KKK gimmick in the first season, so they paid homage to that. And then they were also my personal favorites, the Housewives, which is what the Beatdown Biddies are based on. So I love it that the writers have paid homage to all three of their personas so far. Like, it's just nice that they've been able to work that in. And there was like that brief moment where Dawn and Stacey are, talking on the camping trip, and one of them says, then I won't be here with the scene stealer or whatever. And then you see that little bit of hurt feelings. Like, it's like the only humanizing moment outside from like the gift that they give to Arthi at the end, So I like that they're feeding a little something to us, and maybe in season 4 we'll get some more. But I just enjoyed seeing them again. always fun.
I just want to know where I can find Stacey's Lita Ford T-shirt. Like I need that T-shirt. That was amazing. Yeah, I like them too.
All right. So who else do we want to talk about? Do we want to talk about Debbie a little bit? And oh my gosh, I love Toby Huss. Played JJ. You know, he was in if y'all ever watched *Halt and Catch Fire*. I love that show.
Yes.
Well, he's also Artie, the strongest man in the world from Pete and Pete.
He sure is.
Oh my gosh.
Sure is.
Can you believe it?
Holy crap, I forgot about that. Wow. But I liked his just kind of, he's part of Debbie's life now, and then really quickly out the door, it seemed like, at the end of the season, once she found out what his like real motives were for keeping her around, which wasn't what she thought they were.
Yeah, because
turned out to be
back and forth, right? Because you think he's a real good guy and he's a real solid guy. You know, he shows up at the fundraiser and all of that. You're like, oh, okay, so he's able to manage these, you know, these different lifestyles, and he's okay with that, even though she thought he wouldn't be. And then, you know, he drops it. Nope, but I'm sexist, so not homophobic, but I am sexist.
Yeah. Well, he's like,
wow.
He's like, oh, well, I have a gay friend, or, you know, I have a gay nephew or whatever.
Yeah.
But, so you're like, oh, okay, right. So you can't be a butthole because you have, you know, you're progressive that way. But then he's like, oh, well, you're just supposed to sit there and look pretty. And like, oh, okay, well.
That was a big turn, like Debbie, because, you know, just about the time you think she's going to solidify her life a little bit, then it just kind of gets 180 and she's back out on her own again. You know, it's, I don't know. I thought it was great, a great little twist, but it wasn't what I was expecting. I was hoping that his character would kind of continue a little bit more.
Yeah, it's all the more disappointing because you liked him for so long. And then you're like, oh.
Why'd you have to be that guy?
Yeah.
Because she doesn't need a man. She can do it on her own.
But I love so
well,
much about
she is going to be alone. Yeah.
I love what they do with her character, where she's continually taking advantage of the situation and kind of rewriting it to benefit her. And, you know, her becoming a producer, like, you know, and, you know, earlier on, and then now this, where she's now, you know, using the information that she learned from him to use Bash's money to get herself into a better spot. You know, I mean, she's always like taking that next step and trying to work that next angle. And I love that about her character.
Mm-hmm. Any other characters we want to talk about? You want to talk about Sherry and Keith, or
Bash and Rhonda? I think are great. I think that's a really great story that's going on there, because, like, especially like when Birdie comes in and you're not sure how that's going to play out. Is the mother-in-law going to like her? She thinks she's a gold digger, but you just see like what a good person Rhonda is, like, through and through. And she's 100% there for Bash, even though they kind of got married in a rush in a strange situation. And that they, you know, she's doing her best, but he's not so much, and he's conflicted with his own situations. I really enjoyed that drama that they were dealing with. And again, she's trying to do everything she can, you know, even if it's, you know, a little underhanded and maybe not the smartest thing, but
I was like, what in the world are you doing? I was like, this is not going to work out the way she
very
had
sitcom-y.
Yeah, it was a little.
Well, so Bash was part of two of my favorite scenes from the season too. So when Birdie comes and, you know, he's all ready to just, you know, come out swinging, and she's like, oh, it's not Falcon Crest. Like, and he's like, you do watch TV.
Yes,
you know,
that was a great line.
And then, you know, when he's on vocal rest and Debbie comes in and says her piece and says, okay, this stuff is happening. And then she says, I wish more men were on vocal rest. Like, oh, that's just, it's such a good line. Like, it's absolutely one of the perfect lines of the season.
I liked how Rhonda had discovered that, you know, in order to get Bash interested in her, that she had to make him jealous. You know, that whole BMX guy. So I thought that was fun to watch. that whole interaction.
Mhm.
Paul the Gigolo.
Yeah.
And his interaction with Melrose was pretty hilarious.
That
too.
was
Yeah.
yeah. After the fact, wait, what? I got to pay you?
Talk about a classic sitcom moment.
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't go classic, but
Well,
yeah,
I
maybe,
mean-
maybe
I know
for
what
people.
you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. Classic gag, not necessarily classic subject matter.
Yes. Yes.
Now, there was one character who is missing from this season that I was 100% surprised that he did not show up. Because, the whole reason they went to Vegas at the end of season 2 is Horatio Sands comes in and says, I got a room I got to fill in Vegas. Do you guys want to do it? And he is nowhere and not even mentioned in this season. And so it really surprised me. I was wondering, he's just retconned out of here. I thought he would have been a fun character to have around, So I'm not sure what's going on there.
He turned into Gina Davis.
That's
I
what I
guess
was
so.
thinking. Yeah. Exactly
The
what I was gonna
metamorphosis.
say.
Yeah.
That was Gina Davis took that role.
Yeah. And did a hell of a job with it. I really liked the concept of the aging showgirl, now running the show. And she did a phenomenal job.
I thought she could have been a little more overbearing, being she's running the show, and I know she really wasn't into wrestling, or at least was portrayed that way, but I thought she was going to come down hard on them a couple of times for, whatever they were doing. But I guess if they're pulling in money, it really doesn't matter,
Yeah.
Right.
She just cared about butts and seats. She didn't really care
Right.
necessarily what they were doing to get them there.
Yeah. I just
know.
thought
And
she was
keep
going to be,
Rhapsody alive.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
thought she was going to be a little more of an antagonist, this season. And we really didn't have a true antagonist throughout the whole season. Like we were saying, the Debbie, I don't know. In season 1, it was kind of like she was the bad guy, or even Ruth. That you could, depending on where you're coming from, but you didn't have a true antagonist throughout the whole season. It was more or less stuff would pop up and on particular characters, and that had to be dealt with. But
Well, I would argue the point that the setting was the antagonist. So
Yeah.
Vegas itself was really, it was good and bad for them, but it was bad in so many ways for their relationships. It was bad for them as far as their personal lives, like the betting things that we talked about, or the addictions, drug, sex, and rock and roll. That's, what you have in Vegas. And, these people had that to contend with easily at their fingertips, and in so many ways. And it was, in a way, kind of destroying any kind of situation that they were building up with the relationships that they were trying to hold on to.
I think everybody was their own antagonist this season. Or in a sense, like
That damn buffet.
Well, yeah. Well, I was gonna say, Tim A, like that, her body was her worst enemy.
Yeah.
Her body was betraying her, because she was starting to really feel the impact of wrestling. And again, that's why I go back to the idea that this was more like watching a documentary about Glow, because we saw the behind the scenes of, here's a woman who has the physicality and is able to do it, but at the same time, it is taking a toll on her because of, her age or what she's doing, or a combination of the two. That was hard to watch.
Yeah.
And I thought, the actress portrayed it beautifully. To that, when she's standing there in tears, I shed a few tears myself, because I felt bad for her, because
we've really learned to love her in the last 2 seasons. She's she's such an outgoing person, but she's such a loving person, and then she wants it so bad, and she's like she said, I waited so long to even get started in my career, and she's talking to Debbie, and she's like, you need to go for it or whatever. So
yeah,
and that she's essentially probably the polar opposite of her character more than any of the other, wrestlers there and, putting her son through school and trying to be a good mother at the same time. She's this just pure stereotype, on TV. And you do feel for her in those scenes, and her just popping more pills and more pills as Bash keeps going through that, intro to the show. And you see her the next day.
You got to applaud the actress that she could bring that out, because she is a real professional wrestler.
Yeah.
I mean, of everybody in the cast, her name is
Really?
Awesome Kong. Yeah,
Mhm.
like she wrestles in Japan and all over. Like, so she's a big deal in the wrestling world. And then she switched it, for Glow. She was the one bringing it legitimacy. And then it turns out she's one of like the best actresses on the show as well. She's one of the most entertaining people. So
Yeah.
I give her like double credit just for everything she's been able to accomplish throughout the series.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think as Stacey was saying, I felt so bad for her. I kept waiting for like a Miyagi type moment where like somebody will come out and do their hand thing and like fix her so she could go just a little bit further. And it's like it never happened. It was like, come on,
Yeah.
let her wrestle.
Yeah. And then when you find out that the show is continuing through the end of the year, and she's just, I think that's where she just kind of breaks down.
Right.
Like Stacey was saying backstage, and starts crying, and you do feel for her. So, well, what else do we want to go through here? Is there any other characters we missed we might want to talk about for a minute? Like I said, we didn't talk about Cherry and Keith. I thought that was really genuine. At least the first issue where he's wanting the kids, and she, wants to kind of continue with the career, and that kind of, pushes them away from each other, and then. Essentially Vegas, I guess, gets to her with the gambling debt and all that, and then having to mud wrestle, and
which is so
crazy.
80s. So
That
they
was-
work
yeah.
that in, never
That
a part
was,
low, but still,
that felt a little
fine.
shoehorned, like I said, like
well, but
well,
she named him after the Thundercats. That was
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
awesome.
Like, shout out to Carmen for being a kind of a nerd. Like,
That's-
that was amazing. She's like, we're Thundercats. Like, just
Yeah.
so casually thrown in there. Yeah, we didn't really talk about Carmen either. And I think
Mhm.
Carmen continues to be somebody that I love to watch, because she's the one in the show who, has the pedigree of, being part of a wrestling family, and being the one that didn't really, her family constantly underestimates her. But at the same time, like, she has such a love of wrestling. She's not really going through any personal trauma, other than the fact that, everybody assumes that she, and I liked how they went at this, and they went at it kind of subtly, but, when she gets mad because she's like, everybody just assumes that I don't have anything else to do. Everybody just assumes that I don't have a date. And I thought that was really cool. And then, just the fact that she absolutely loves wrestling, and she loves the stories, and, in the Christmas episode, like she comes up with this whole concept of a Christmas Carol, but in a wrestling ring. And, I absolutely loved that episode. It was so much fun. But at the same time, like, just understanding what that kind of thing means to Carmen. I thought she, again, just fun to watch her, and just be so into it.
she
and
was
that's
almost
the episode where I
Ruth.
teared up, though, because when Keith comes back as Santa, like that they set that up, and that was her, her Secret Santa gift. That was wonderful. I love that.
Yeah. Carmen was almost the Ruth this season, coming up with, was she the one that came up with the Twisted Tuesday or whatever? I can't remember who had that idea, but yeah, her doing the production work on the Christmas, show. And that was Ruth in season 1, where she just wanted to do this and that, and let's try this. And she was almost the one keeping the show together this season.
I think the story arc that surprised me was Sam and Justine. I love the Sam just banging away his typewriter every day and just feeling like he's not getting anything substantial done, and then Justine just coming out and bam, she's got a script that's worthy of being picked up for a movie. And it's just such a fun turn of events for that character. And I love seeing the evolution of kind of great, we have something successful here. What do we do now? And then kind of having to roll with it. So I was pleasantly surprised that, that was a storyline that, even though it was away from the ring, it was something that I really got into enjoy.
I was kind of part of what dragged the season down for me was Sam was nowhere to be found. He was there. He became a referee there when Keith left, and then he had no input or no direction to any of the ladies. Everybody was just kind of on autopilot. And granted, yeah, we're in Vegas and it's the same show night after night, but that was the fun of season 1 and season 2 was, all right, what is Sam going to come up with to kind of keep this together? And then he adds the little twist of Welfare Queen getting the crown at the end of season 1, and just his input into the whole show and production. I really missed that part. But now that I think about it, it's hard to walk away from seeing your daughter succeed and her wanting you to direct in her movie versus just sitting out and rotting away in Vegas. But at the same time, he was kind of, bringing things back around too. And that was a whole 180 where he's working out and he's trying to get healthy. And then all of a sudden, boom, right in the office there when they're pitching the movie, he pretty much has a heart attack and he's in the hospital. Keeps it all pinned, to himself, pun intended there. But I don't know. I didn't like the way that kind of ended up, that he's now as separated from the show as almost anybody at the end of the season,
Yeah, I agree. They got to get him back into being part of that show in order for me to really get excited about like a season 4.
Yeah. And I'm sure
it seems like that's where they're going, right? It's like a Blues Brothers getting the band back together, because at the airport at the end, like everybody's taken off, and some of them are not agreeing to return. So it's really, kind of like, hey, I guess it'll be a road trip or something next time around, see where everybody ended up.
Yeah. Well, let's kind of get towards that finale, because I do want to hear what you guys think for season 4, but let's just quickly go through maybe some of the aesthetics of the show. The film locations, we talked about the desert camping trip and, of course, filming there at the Vegas hotel. The music, oh my gosh, I thought the music was great throughout, and it's been great throughout the whole series. Obviously, I'm going to say that because I'm such the 80s geek, but just some of the songs when they're traveling to the desert, you hear Fleetwood Mac's Gypsy, and just some of the other songs. It wasn't heavy-handed. Like sometimes you're watching even Stranger Things to a certain extent. You drop a song, you're like, oh yeah, and the whole never-ending story, part of that. None of the music I thought was just really overpowering. It was just kind of a nice fit to what they're trying to establish in the scene. So what did you guys think about the music? Anybody?
Yeah, I agree. There were 2 songs that they did this season that really resonated with me. One was Kate Bush, Running Up That Hill. That is an awesome, actually, sorry, 3 songs. That one, the scene with Cities in Dust, with Ruth taking off her makeup, and then the really sped up time lapse behind her.
That was great. Yeah, that was really great.
That was gorgeous. But my favorite, and anybody who knows me is going to not be surprised about this at all, but my favorite of the season was at the end of the camping trip. Dolly Parton's Light of a Clear Blue Morning. That is my favorite Dolly Parton song. And I was already in a glass case of emotion because of the episode. And then they started playing the first few notes of that song. And I looked at my husband and I was like, they're not. And then just waterworks, absolute waterworks. So yeah, whoever is working. Yeah, whoever's working on the music, they've done a good job all 3 seasons, but I think this season was probably the best for music in terms of picking things that were definitely of the era or maybe a little bit before the era, but things that still fit within the confines of the story.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to remember. They played Barracuda at one point, and it just picked up the mood. Oh, I can't remember which scene it was, but I remember thinking like, "Oh yeah, Barracuda." Anyway, what about you guys? Anything else you want to talk about as far as just the? Well, we talked a little bit about the Challenger and all of the events that are happening around being set in the 80s. I think Dave, you said you liked it.
Yeah, when you had mentioned earlier where you felt like the Challenger explosion was kind of shoehorned in, or just felt kind of forced, but at the same time it was so powerful way to kick off the season for me, because you could just imagine what that would feel like, where you're Zoya, and you're like talking bad about Americans and all that, and then all of a sudden here's this thing, and exactly what would happen. You would be like mesmerized by watching the news program, and you'd be like, all right, cut, we're done.
Yeah.
That's exactly what would happen, because you'd be like, I've got nothing here. This is I can't continue this, and then somehow you lay blame on yourself, for talking that way, even though you're just playing a character bit. So to me, I thought that bled really well into the, their character of how they would interact with that particular crisis that was going on, the catastrophe that was going on. And it's kind of how they were kind of dealing with it. And then also they had to kind of heal like anybody, that was there to see that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So I think they did that really, really well. And I've got to imagine, I was never in Vegas in the 80s, but I've got to imagine that's exactly what it would have been like, with the way they were dealing with the hotel, casino. I don't remember if they actually said this was on the Strip, but it was off the Strip, right?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, and that's kind of what, if you ever go out to Vegas and you go to like Fremont or whatever like that, and it's not like the cleanest of places to visit, and just imagine what that would have been like 30 years ago. You'd be like, yeah, that feels like that's what that would have been like. So I think they nailed it, and okay. I enjoyed that.
I think with the Challenger thing, because I remember that was the first, and certainly wasn't the first national tragedy that happened when I was a kid, but it's the first one that I remember really resonating with me, and really having to come to grips with the fact that here was this thing that space exploration, no matter what age you are, is kind of a magical thing. And there was a little bit of a loss of innocence, I think, for a lot of us when that happened. I remember just being almost inconsolable because they kept showing it over and over and over.
Oh my gosh, they did.
They even addressed that on the show. Like, they're just showing the same footage over and over, and everybody was glued to the TV. And I remember my mom like pulling me away from the TV and being like, okay, that's enough. Like, that's, I know you were really excited because there was a teacher going into space, and, but that, so, I love the fact that, it was a little bit like, oh yeah, I'm reminded of how I felt about that, but it really did set the tone for the season, because I think that was sort of the, we talked about the honeymoon being over, but this is not going to be the glitter and flashy wrestling that you're used to in season 2. This is going to be some, it's going to get real, and there'll still be some wrestling, but it's going to get real in here before the season's over. So yeah, I thought they took something that actually happened and put it in a nice organic way, and to help drive the story forward.
Yeah, I just can't imagine if you're younger, if you didn't, go through that tragedy and feel the impact of it, and then you're almost going through it again, watching them. Zoya making fun of the teacher. Her name escapes me now, but
Krista McAuliffe.
Yes, thank you. It was just like, wow. It was just a huge polarizing event to plug right into the first episode. So yeah, it definitely did, kind of set the tone. What kind of?
And I don't. And I'm sorry to interrupt you, Jason.
No,
but
go ahead.
I don't know if you guys were like me when you're watching that episode and you knew what was going to happen because you remember that was the teacher growing up.
Mhm.
And you hear her talking like that, and the whole time you're like, "Oh my god, just shut up!"
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ruth.
stop talking.
I went through this once. I don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to go through it again. It was crazy.
Yeah,
But-
on a lighter note, I'll mention this. The one thing, just talking about the 80s, we mentioned it very briefly, but the fact that Bash's idea to revamp the Rhapsody show was to add BMX bikers.
Yeah.
So to have showgirls
That
with
was
BMX,
great.
I mean, that's
Pretty
100%
amazing.
80s, just
Yeah.
only
Yes.
in the 80s. So that was
That was-
beautiful. I would have
that
loved to
was
have seen
perfect.
a little bit more than just that one, those two girls on the ramps at one time.
Yes.
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
Bash
I wanted-
signature.
I wanted to see that whole show. Yeah, that would have been great. One thing that just kind of came to mind too, because I remember later in the season, kind of polar opposite to everything else and all the drama going on and everything is just Debbie and Ruth yucking it up like nothing had ever happened between them. I was like, wow, that was like, it seemed a very quick, that drama lasted through the whole, a good part of season 2, all of season 1, between them both. And now to the point where they're joking with each other and the whole scene where Ruth is dancing around and Sam walks in, that just, I was like, wow, it's gone. The whole tension between both of them is gone.
And
that
it's a
they-
nice
that they
release for
built.
the audience, right? We can finally be like, oh, they're good. They're good. But
Right.
only to set up that last scene. And
Right.
then to not be good again. You're like, Ruth. And
Yeah.
Debbie, for being presumptuous. But still, it's kind of, it's that conflicting thing. She's like, come on, if Hollywood wanted you by now, you would have gotten those parts. Just come with me. And you're like, oh, Debbie, don't do that. But then Ruth just not being realistic. Maybe we'll see. Maybe she's gonna get a big part for season 4. Who knows? It was worth it. The right decision.
Right.
So the Ruth and Debbie relationship are like the Sam and Diane relationship of Cheers, where you're just like,
Basically.
it's a roller coaster ride. You never know what's
Totally.
going to happen, right?
Yeah, it's always, I've always, even through like season 2 and the beginning of this season, I'm always waiting for that one little jab from Debbie to put things back to where they were from, the pilot episode. And it just never happened. And it got to the point where I was like, wow, everything is hunky dory. And then, transitioning to the final scene where Debbie tells Ruth about the TV station that Bash has bought and this whole deal that she kind of underhanded JJ to get, and Ruth basically just rejecting her getting on the plane to go back home. And then you got Carmen hitting the road with her brothers on the wrestling tour and everybody kind of going in opposite directions. So let's start with Stacey. Just give me some maybe predictions or some things that you want to see in season 4 to maybe, I don't know. I got the feeling I need everything to be brought back together at the end of that. But what are you kind of expecting for season 4?
So I honestly don't know what to expect. I think the predictable thing, maybe, I don't know, is that Debbie does, the deal goes through. Debbie gets to run things the way she wants to, and we get the realistic, like real life Glow live from the Riviera. It's Glow, kind of thing. But they made a point twice to, Debbie says she's not supposed to say anything, and before that, when she and Bash are talking to, I guess, his lawyers, and they're like, you can't breathe a word of it. And now she's said this, it would continue down a dark path if that happened. But there, I think there's an outside chance that maybe because Debbie has said something that, this deal doesn't go through. for whatever reason. So, I honestly don't know. I think they've set forth a lot of storylines that don't really have anything to do with wrestling. I think I'm guessing we'll see Sheila pursuing an acting career. Maybe that also means that she wrestles while she's doing that. She wrestles at night. She does plays on her off nights. I don't know. But I think I'll just say I think that, like I said, the predictable thing is the thing with Debbie goes through, and we get to see Glow kind of as those of us who watched it remember it.
Yeah.
It's still happening in Vegas, but maybe or maybe just being filmed at this new TV station. But I don't know. I'm excited to see whatever it is. I know that.
Do we know, or have y'all read how many seasons they're trying to play this out, or anything like that?
I don't know. They better hold on, because with the Disney Plus streaming service launching and the Warner Brothers, they're going to have a lot more competition and a lot less content. So I think Netflix is holding on to Glow and Stranger Things, and just saying, that's what we got. Yeah. We're going to push this as hard as we can. So I'm imagining at least 2 more seasons.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Adam, what do you think about moving into season 4?
Yeah, I got a couple things I think just narratively almost have to happen. Number one, I'm excited to see Tebe play basically Mr. Fuji or Bobby Heenan. Like, she's going to be a manager now. Like, she can't wrestle, but she can be a manager, and she's perfect for that. So I think that's going to be really fun.
She's going to be Miss Kitty or Jackie Stallone.
Hopefully not Jackie Stallone.
Oof, no.
She was the worst. But yeah, so I think that's going to happen. But I think Justine's movie is going to crash and burn. It's going to be a big disappointment, so that's going to bring them back into the fold. She's going to have to learn some lessons there for sure about the realities of Hollywood or whatever else. And I also, I have a feeling that it's going to be kind of that situation where Debbie's going to look at who she has left. She's going to be like, wait. I got Reggie. I got Dawn and Stacey. I got, Jenny. And she's going to say, I don't have my big stars right now. And she's probably going to let that out at some point, and everybody's going to get really mad at her because she's going to be like, we're not a strong crew right now, and I got to bring in some ringers. Maybe she'll call on some of her old acting friends and try to get them into the business. So I think there's going to be something there where they're going to have to deal with the shrinking of their ranks and have some fun. So yeah, those are some of the things I'm looking forward to and seeing where they take it.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with that. Dave?
I think my thought is what's going to happen is, that Debbie is going to realize that she's a very strong, smart businesswoman, but she's not all there as a creative. And the people that have been the creative side of, pushing forward, the really interesting aspects of what they've been doing so far, be it Carmen and Ruth, are no longer there. And she's going to have to come up with a game plan, in the way to make things work to her advantage to get them back. And I think that's I think that's going to be a tough realization for her as a character, because she's done so much to try to be in charge of things. And, she's lost kind of the people that have that creative fun aspect. Mm-hmm. And I think she's going to have to come to terms with that. And I think that would be a fun journey to see.
Okay. Yeah, I'm with you there. I do think there's going to be a point where the show is going to kind of collapse, or, like y'all were saying, she looks out. I would love to see some new characters come in, wrestlers, in the next season. And then I think it's going to be to get to the point where Debbie's in desperation, and she's got to convince Bash now with his $40 million to open up his wallet and get Sam back. And then Sam is the one that's going to have to get Ruth back. And I just hope it all kind of comes together that way. There's a chain reaction of events that gets people motivated to get back to where they were in season 1.
A junk chain reaction?
Oh!
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Carmen, going out on the road with her family. She doesn't get to be in the spotlight. Maybe, she's kind of behind the scenes and she wants to be, she misses the limelight of Glow. I don't know.
I would like to see her learn more moves. She's out on the road learning and just building that up, and then she becomes one of the stars of the show.
Mm-hmm.
I think that could happen. But I just want to see some new characters in there. I like I like what Adam was saying with TMA as the manager. Maybe a couple of them are going to be managers and really kind of put a new show together that we get to see and start some new fake storylines on this show for us to follow. And then just that, I don't know, there was just something simple about that episode where it was just a Glow show in season 2. And I'm not saying they have to do that again, but I just need more elements of that to pop up during the off-screen, outside the wrestling ring drama that they've put into the show. So that's where the balance kind of, I guess, shifted with me this season, where it was heavy on the drama, and we got less of that wrestling aspect, and I needed that to be a little bit more balanced, I guess. So
I think it'd be fun if we got a little bit more dirty pool play, in the wrestling aspect, like where we talked about where, the real life Hollywood, where she was like, hiding stuff to bring you out in the match and, all of a sudden be hitting somebody with a chair or, some sort of hidden object. Maybe that's got to be incorporated more into the next season, where they start getting a little more dirtier.
Were super crazy. Like they did stuff like, Gestapo matches and all this like random stuff. So maybe that is like the shock value is what they have to do to get ratings, and it kind of degrades them a little bit. They're like, oh, this isn't who we are. We got to get our creative people back. So I think that'd be really interesting.
Well, I don't know about you, but like during the off season or between seasons, I'm going to try to go out and watch some old seasons of Glow. Mick has been telling me, and I think he's mentioned on our podcast too, that it's out on that app Tubi, and you can watch whole seasons of Glow. So I'm going to go do my my research, my whatever history during the middle of these seasons, in hopes that I'd like to get that new or that fresh aspect of what it was like back then when I go through my rewatches again, before season 4. So that's kind of my goal in between seasons, to get out there and to watch some of the old matches and storylines and such. So, well, man, this has been fun. You guys, I think we really duked it out, and it was still a friendly match. Didn't get too heated. Didn't have to, kick anybody out of the arena or,
no big bad mama voodoo hypnotizing everybody.
Yeah, no hypnotizing. Yeah, I think we were, we kept it clean. So, but it was really fun. So, yeah, I just want to invite everybody to, go out and follow us, TRN Social, and then everybody's personal accounts. Stacey is geeky_vixen, Adam Hoju Koolander, Dave Bonsai Retro Club and bonsairetroclub.com. Check out their podcast as well. And man, this is really fun. I appreciate you guys coming on with me to talk.
Yeah, it's been a blast, man. I appreciate the invite.
Yeah, absolutely.
Waiting for season 5. Come on, or season 4. Here we go. Already
skip right over season 4.
Yeah.
We go right to 5.
Right over it. All right, well, we will wrap our review of Glow season 3. Thank you, everybody, for joining us here on the Retro Network podcast channel, and we will see you next time.